live in interesting times. Today's stories. Eccentric billionaire John McAfee launches a presidential bid from Cuba. The Brazilian owner of the world's most famous terrace misses World Cup crowds. China accuses the British foreign minister of colonial fantasy over Hong Kong. Prime Minister Trudeau meets Ukraine's President Zelensky in Toronto. One Canadian province is trying to make it easier for immigrants to get their professional credentials recognized. And Art Vancouver celebrates international talent. This is Eagle News broadcasting from Vancouver, Canada, bringing you stories from around the globe. I am Cara Cabusao. After making his fortune with antivirus software and fleeing Belize after a murder case, American millionaire John McAfee is on a new career path. McAfee has launched a second bid for the U.S. presidency from his yacht anchored in Havana.
Well, I'm running for president of the U.S. on a very unpopular platform. My platform is one of total disagreement with the U.S. government in terms of foreign policy, in terms of being the world's policeman, in terms of America is turning into a police state.
Just how serious a bid this is remains unclear. McAfee seems to be a reluctant candidate.
I don't want to be president. I really don't. Nor could I be. Really, look at me. I can't be president. However, I do have a large following and I will influence this next election.
As far as Cuba, McAfee doesn't appear to be too informed.
I know nothing about communism. I do know that we should not be interfering with Cuba. We should not be blockading this country. Cuba has never extradited an American citizen. And Cuba is not exactly a friend of the U.S. government.
While McAfee cruises his yacht in the Caribbean, the man who hosted barbecues and parties on his terrace overlooking Brazil's Maracanã Stadium isn't doing so well anymore. During the World Cup and the Olympics, hundreds of tourists flocked to the home of Janivel Babal da Silva Batista. But the Copa America isn't drawing the same crowds. And nowadays, Da Silva's patio is empty and he is working as a driver for a ride-sharing app.
Do momento agora está fraco, muito fraco. Em vista da Copa do Mundo, em vista da Olimpíada, que também fizemos trabalho em cima da laje, lá, aqui, entendeu? Ficou legal, mas no momento essa aí não está legal não.
Da Silva remembers the glory days when fans from all over the world gathered on his property.
Minha laje subiu. O que se imagina de gringo na minha laje subiu. Japão, França, Espanha, Chile, Argentina, pessoal dos Estados Unidos, pessoal de Dubai, variou.
Glover Oliveira dos Santos described Da Silva's property as one of a kind.
Essa laje aqui é a laje mais famosa do planeta, assim como a comunidade da Mangueira, assim como a escola de samba Estação Primeira de Mangueira. Copa do Mundo só deu essa laje, não tem jeito. Olha o visual. Pega, visual, lindo, maravilhoso, Maracanã. Tu quer laje melhor do que essa? Eu acho que não existe.
As far as his new life as rideshare driver, Da Silva says it keeps food on the table.
Trabalho, hoje nós temos trabalhando aí no aplicativo doutores, advogados, professores, garis, etc. Muita gente. Foi um meio de não ficar desempregado. Isso é uma renda por fora. E graças a Deus.
Up next, China accuses the British foreign minister of colonial fantasy over Hong Kong. Prime Minister Trudeau meets Ukraine's President Zelensky in Toronto. One Canadian province is trying to make it easier for immigrants to get their professional credentials recognized. These stories and more when Eagle News returns. We will be right back. Welcome back. You are watching Eagle News. China has lodged an official protest with London after British Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt warned Beijing of serious consequences if it breaches the Hong Kong handover agreement. It is the second day in a row Beijing has hit back at Hunt for remarks he made about the unprecedented anti-Beijing protests that have rocked the former British colony. Under the terms of the 1997 handover deal from British to Chinese rule, Hong Kong enjoys rights and liberties unseen on the mainland. But protesters accuse Beijing of reneging on that deal with the help of unelected leaders. Hunt's comments and his support of the protesters have infuriated Beijing. China Foreign Affairs spokesman Geng Shuang says Hunt is living in the past.
但他似乎还沉浸在昔日英国殖民者的幻想当中，还执迷于居高临下对他国事务指手画脚的恶习当中，依然不思悔改，继续信口雌黄。
Shuang says Hunt to stay in his own lane.
英方对回归后的香港，一无主权，二无治权，三无监督权。 根本不存在任何所谓的责任。
Shuang reminded Hunt there was limited freedom when Britain administered Hong Kong.
所谓香港居民的自由是英方争取来的，这种说法简直是厚颜无耻。我想问问亨特先生，在英国对香港进行殖民统治期间，香港有何民主可言？ 港人连上街游行的权利都没有。
The demonstrations erupted last month against legislation that would allow extraditions to the mainland. The protests rose to a new level on Monday when demonstrators stormed the city's legislature. They wrote anti-Beijing messages on the walls such as "Hong Kong is not China." They also hung the colonial-era flag. Shuang says Hunt's remarks on the situation are out of line.
我们在伦敦和北京都已经向英方提出了严正交涉。我们希望英方认真对待中方的严正立场，不要再发表类似的错误言论，不要再粗。
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has rolled out the red carpet for Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The two met in Toronto for a Ukraine Reform Conference.
What a pleasure it is to welcome President Zelensky to Toronto, to Canada, for this third Ukraine Reform Conference, but mostly an opportunity for us to continue to emphasize how important Ukraine is to Canada, how deep the friendship is.
The two leaders attended a signing ceremony when Trudeau reaffirmed that Canada will continue to support Ukraine in its dispute with Russia.
Russia's actions are not only a threat to Ukraine, but to international law. The international community continues to monitor the situation closely, and we are taking action to ensure the safety and security of Ukraine as well as the Baltic states. We also will, of course, continue to stand with Ukraine against Russian interference and aggression, and work to create a greater future, a better future for all of our friends in Ukraine.
Trudeau pledged to deepen Canada's relationship with Ukraine.
We're going to continue to work with Ukraine, specifically with the President, on a broad range of things that are going to be good for Ukrainian people, good for Canadians as we deepen economic and people-to-people ties.
One Canadian province is trying to make it easier for immigrants to get their professional credentials recognized. Eagle News correspondent Thomas Eilickness explains the dilemma faced by some highly trained newcomers to Canada.
Doctors driving cabs, architects and engineers cleaning office buildings. That's the reality many immigrants to Canada face. And the Alberta government wants to put an end to highly skilled immigrants having to take survival jobs. The major problem is licensing agencies are dragging their feet when it comes to evaluating immigrant credentials. Immigration consultant Tony Santiago says while the federal government says it wants skilled people, when they arrive, newcomers find they aren't employable in their fields.
Well, it's unfortunate that while Canada recognizes your profession for points in the immigration application, they don't actually recognize your ability to practice that here in Canada. So people who come here with the expectation that they're going to become doctors because they're doctors back home or engineers simply cannot. So that is the reality.
Santiago says the only alternative in many cases is for immigrants to take whatever work they can find.
So what do? You take survival jobs. And it's really a waste of human capital. Imagine the old saying that the best place to have a heart attack is in Canada, especially if you're riding a cab. Why? Because your cab driver is most likely going to be a cardiologist.
Alberta Premier Jason Kenney says the situation isn't right and his government is doing something about it.
Too many immigrants, including Filipinos, have to wait for years to get their credentials recognized. Sometimes there are unfair barriers. We want to knock those down. We have brought in a law to force the licensing agencies to give people an answer within 6 months.
Kenney says he'll get tough with agencies that fail to meet that deadline.
And we'll fine them if they don't. I'm also prepared to pull their status as regulatory bodies if they don't give immigrants a fair and fast process.
Fines will run as high as $50,000. These new regulations give hope to immigrants. Hope that their skills will not be wasted. In Edmonton, Thomas I. Likeness, Eagle News, I'm one with 25.
Coming up, Art Vancouver celebrates international talent. Eagle News will return shortly. This is Eagle News. I am Cara Cabusao. Art Vancouver International Art Fair displays pieces in different disciplines, sure to keep the art enthusiasts engaged. Let's hear more from Kathleen.
Artists and art enthusiasts, welcome to Art Vancouver International Art Fair, an annual event that aims to unite nations through art. Art Vancouver, an inclusive and immersive event celebrating international talent through visual art, boasts about hundreds of original works from a diverse lineup of artists and exhibitors from Canada and from around the world.
Art Vancouver is an international art fair. It happens every single year, so it's an annual event at the convention center where we are right now. It's a 4-day event, and we have over 100 artists and galleries coming from all around the world to exhibit their artwork.
The event displays over 1,200 pieces from different disciplines, which include paintings, sculptures, photography, and mixed media in forms of glass and wood.
This year's theme is United Nations Through Art. So our goal was to bring artists from all around the world. We have over 20 different countries represented in here. So we're really trying to bring the different culture, different impacts, and different techniques into one place in here in Vancouver.
The show also has art classes, workshop, guided tours, speakers series, and this year's Art Masters. Art Masters is a painting competition where artists are provided with only an hour to create a themed piece of canvas using a unique box of supplies. This year's winner is Ibe Ananaba from Nigeria. Vancouver's diversity and inclusiveness are definitely reflected in the exhibit. This year's fair has attracted over 10,000 attendees, a record-breaking number for the organization.
What we really try to do is to nurture not only those who are already established artists or galleries, but also we try to pick those who are emerging artists. We support them with promotion, with marketing, and we really try to help them to get to sometimes just make the first step out there in their career. And just in general, our mission is to support and empower not only local but international arts community. So this is how we do it.
Reporting from Vancouver, Canada, I'm Kathleen Cruz, 1 with 25.
Thanks, Kathleen. That is this week's Eagle News. Join us next week for stories that matter to you. Visit our websites at eaglenews.net and eaglenewslive.com. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/eaglenews and on facebook.com/eaglenews. Thank you for watching. I am Kara Kabusao. I am 1 with 25.